Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today. You know what? I gotta thank the big man upstairs for just looking after me here, because after Starfield Shattered Space, where I felt very robbed of my traditional Bethesda Game Studios exploration experience, normally a gamer has to go through years of agony, years of pain, years of missing that feeling, missing that high after you hit such a tremendous low. But in this year, I've got Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, I got the Oblivion Remaster, and now I have Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon. It has been raining Bethesda Game Studios style games lately, and I have been loving it, and also healing. So I'm here to tell you about Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon. Now, to be transparent, the first time I did cover this video was when the game was in early access. That was also a sponsored video, but my rule with my sponsored videos is like, let me say what I want, and you can have a slot on the channel. That's how it's always worked. But nonetheless, I wanted to just be upfront and transparent about that. I have been playing the 1.0 version, paid for by me, no sponsorship, and I am like loving it. I am so surprised at how great this truly is and how much it reminds me of my favorite parts of Elder Scrolls, but also introduces new things that I really hope like Elder Scrolls 6 takes notes from. Nonetheless, if you're a BGS style fan, I think you're going to love this jank and everything. But I've been playing it, sinking in those hours, and I cannot wait to sink in many more in a year that has been full of really surprising distractions. And best of all, add this one to the list, another $45 to $50 game. How about that? It's almost like there's a trend happening here. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about Tainted Grail, Fall of Avalon. I'm really excited to put this one on your radar because the thing that upsets me the most is it's not getting a lot of media attention. So I'm trying to do my part, trying to help. So yeah, if you're new here and you're into Bethesda Game Studio style games, whether it be Elder Scrolls or a Scrolls-like, consider subscribing. All right, so where I really want to begin before I sink into more traditional Bethesda Game Studios like content is actually where I think the game differentiates itself a lot. One of those areas is, to me at least, the combat. Now I'll say this, I am not a huge fan of Tainted Grail's melee combat. It is that finicky, bouncy, melee style combat you would find in a Bethesda Game Studios style game. But where I've really found my pocket and where I've really fallen in love with the combat is both the character building and the magic system. The magic system especially has been both flashy and very fun as I'm mixing together like dodging and evading at the same time as shooting out spells and building up status effects. But really where it all came together for me with those two elements of character building and magic was with the summoning system. The summoning system is awesome in this game. I'm bringing in everything from corpse eaters all the way to skeletons and having them fight for me. Now, the way the game balances it out is when you summon these enemies in, they're going to have their own health bars that'll appear right above your own health bar. They'll also take up a chunk of your overall mana meter. Now, opening this game up, it is a lot more difficult than, say, your average Bethesda Game Studio style game. I think a fair comparison that my buddy Lockmort made would be like first-person Elden Ring or first-person Dark Souls. Not just because, oh, it's difficult, so it's Elden Ring, but more so when you get the vibe of the universe alongside how the game isn't afraid to punish you early. It does kind of depict that almost FromSoft-inspired experience, but the power curve hits you a lot sooner, and it doesn't really let up. So what happened was when I was using the summoning originally, you'll see it in the gameplay, I just kept running out of mana. I'm like, man, I really need to figure this out. But then I found an entire Druid's Robe, and all of the passive effects increased my mana regeneration, and in a complete set, it totally changed the game for me. Now I'm summoning enemies, and my mana bar is refilling so quickly that I'm just spell slinging constantly. Then I start leveling up. I put points into my spirituality, which increases my spell power. It also has skills within that skill tree that allow me to do things like increase my overall mana pool, or unlock a skill called Summoner Battery, which gives me more mana regen based on how many enemies I've summoned, and it increases the percentage with each point I put into that skill. That is where I really fell in love, because that felt like I was really picking a lane and diving deep into it. I was ignoring everything from archery to two-handed weapons to one-handed weapons. I was ignoring even different types of play styles within the mage class, like using wands, using just separate one-handed spells. Because yes, in a very Skyrim-like move, or I guess Avowed as well now, you can dual wield spells, you can wield a melee weapon and a spell at the same time, a shield and a spell if you'd like. It does have those crazy combinations, and each of these are assigned to one of 4 weapon loadouts. So if you're like me and you're just going full mage, I was just going in between like an ember spell and then an ice spell and a summoning spell. And then I ended up finding another spell that let me use my own summons to regen my health. So when I was getting attacked, I'd charge up this spell and shoot it at one of my skeletons and I'd regenerate my own health. Or if I needed to get like, no, I need to shoot more of my spell, I just zap one of them quickly because there's a short cast window and a long cast window. Depending on the spells, they'll have different effects and different uses. The short cast for what let me zap my own summons would give me my mana back as well really quickly. So I wouldn't have to wait for them to die. So it gives you like a lot of control over the battlefield. And this is just, again, the magic portion of the game. I personally enjoy playing as, say, a mage in an Elder Scrolls game, but a lot of it's like holding down and sticking out my hand and just shooting a flamethrower, and that's fine at all. Like, this isn't a video of me dogging on Elder Scrolls. There's a reason I love it, and clearly the developers love it so much that they wanted to make their own Scrolls-like game, but I just love how this game has leaned both into character building and a really fun magic system, where it feels like this is the best part of the gameplay experience, if I'm honest, because I also did actually mess around with a little bit of archery early on. That felt fun. That felt very BGS coded with the sneak damage and everything. But I will say this, that if you would just jump into this game and you're going full melee, I wonder, and maybe it's just because I haven't dove deep into, say, the melee skills and what I can unlock there, but I do wonder if you would have as much fun on just fighting as I was. I think it's also because there was a little bit of danger. I mean, because this game, with all the summons and everything, I was taking on like high level early game bosses when I probably shouldn't have, because I was using my summons as like a sponge. And since enemies hit so hard, if you're going full melee and you're not mastering that parry system, the game will absolutely punish you. So I think it's a lot more difficult for those of you who are out there being much tougher than me and being a melee bro. But I think the dodge system also works really well. The iframes you get for it, it's very effective, where I've started to depend on it a lot. Like, oh, they're attacking me in this window, I'm going to dodge right now and get right out of the way. And you'll see, just like in an Elder Scrolls game, as I'm using all these skills I'm talking about, that the skill meter will rise. And when it rises enough, guess what? You gain that XP, you rest at a place, and you level up. Just like Oblivion. It's a beautiful thing. In fact, I think many of you watching this game are going to kind of feel that little bit of like, damn, I've been sinking so much time into an Oblivion-like game when like the new Oblivion is right here. And so some people might be like burnt on this type of game, but for me, as someone who had their Oblivion playthrough cut short, this game is feeding me everything I wanted. So I just wanted to highlight that. I wanted to highlight the combat up front, because I do think the magic system is a ton of fun. What I also love in this game is my favorite, exploration. Now, you can play this game in third person. I want to throw this out there. They added this late in the development cycle because a lot of their fans wanted it. So they said like, okay, we'll do it. But when you switch over to third person, they do something I've never seen before. They say, this is an accessibility option. This is not fully polished. We added it late, like literally just right there, like boom, here you go. Like, this is what's happening here. So the game was built for first person. That means its environments were built for first person. Its animations were built for first person. But if you want to just jog around the open world in third person, like, you could do that. You could fight in third person. Like, you can do everything in third person, but it's not going to look as good or probably feel as good, because again, the whole game for years was built with first person, but they treat it as an accessibility option. I think for, again, the BGS diehard who likes to explore in third person, then fight in first person, you have that little niche right there that you can enjoy. Still, I just think kudos to the devs. Like, I love the energy of this team that they would do something like that. Like, yeah, this isn't going to be like fully polished, but it's going to matter to the player. And that sort of player first mentality, I mean, as we've seen in these last couple of years, that matters more and more. Like, polish does matter, but the fact that they hit me with a pretty much like a warning sign right at first, I was like, okay, cool, like, noted. Thank you for letting me know, and I'm just happy it's here. Not every developer is going to get that level of grace, but when you're like a small indie style team from Poland making this type of game, this ambitious of a game, like, yeah, your level of grace and give from me at least is a lot more generous compared to, I think, standard like full-on AAA productions where I'd expect those things to be more polished. Anyway, back to exploration. It's not just the camera perspective. I love how much content's in this game. It's overwhelming at first. Like, you'll get to your first town and you'll get a million bounties, and then you'll talk to someone and they'll give you a side quest, and all these NPCs are fully voiced, varying in quality for voice acting work, as I think you'd expect for a game like this. Like, some characters sound really good. Like, when King Arthur speaks, I'm like, damn, is that Ulysses? Is that Ulysses from New Vegas? It's not, but I'm like, damn, okay. And then other characters talk, you're like, all right, this is where you can cut the budget a little bit. You're just like, we need a voice for this. But overall, all of them are voiced, and they all have a lot of interesting things to say depicting the lore that I'll dive into in a little bit. But you're going to load up on quests. And what I love is that this game masters something that I think like even Baldur's Gate 3 did really well, which is you go to a location for objective A and you don't realize lying in there is quest B. So you're doing objective A and then you find someone in like this side location. For example, I went to a graveyard to learn about a necromancer and I went into a little side crypt because I was like, oh, I just want to explore this. Like, what's in here? Turns out it's a full dungeon. And at the end of it all is a spirit that's been collecting all of these goodies and trinkets that you can dig up and you get a lot of great loot. But basically they've been doing this because it keeps their legend alive. And for you to continue their legend, you have to steal something for them. And it just opened up a whole quest where I was like, well, what's going on here? So I went back to the town and stole for them, and I won't spoil the rest for you, but I was like, damn, okay, like that was just a nice little distraction that pulled me away from what I was here for in the first place. And it was interesting because, again, these characters being fully voiced and just having that dialogue selection and just a lot of questions you can ask them before you actually take on the quest was really good. Because like that's to me like RPG dialogue 101. It's like, how many questions can I ask you? Because some games really limit it to like 1 or 2 options, but this game really lets you get like full context, just digging to these characters more and more and more. So yeah, just shout out to the exploration, shout out to the combat. It also helps that I think the game looks pretty good thanks to like its skies and just the way the music hits at the right time. Again, very Bethesda code in that way. The music reminds me both of a From Software game, but I'd say especially in like the battle music, the boss music, very Witcher 3 coded. So if you're a fan of the Witcher soundtrack, I think you will have a lot of fun with what they've cooked up here. The art style is also very different. You'll see as I'm playing in the open world, this is very like, oh, fantasy-like. Okay, cool. But then there are parts of the game that are these H.R. Geiger, borderline alien rips that play into kind of the history of Avalon. I mean, that H.R. Geiger style is just iconic, of course, so it's just really cool to see it. But to find it blended into a fantasy world, I thought was a really unique approach. Even if they didn't like vary it up a lot and kind of put their own spin on it, just finding it here in this world in the early parts of the game, I was like, damn, okay, this is weird and different. And it built a little bit of intrigue. And when you mix that in with the fantasy world and like the crypts and the creatures you're finding, it gives it its own unique blend. So far, the story is pretty interesting. I'm not so deep that I feel I can say a lot of definitive things. I know this game is broken up across 3 open maps. So what I think I'll be doing is just kind of chipping away through this on my PC and then giving some thoughts once I'm done. I'd like to play it more on my Steam Deck on a side note here before I get more into the story, but it does not feel good in my opinion with the controller, and the frame rate isn't that great either, where I think if you're able to play this on PC, probably the best place to play it. The console experience I've read is a little more hit or miss, but if you like the core gameplay I'm talking about, you'll enjoy it more. But I also think it's because I started off at 60 frames, and like when I went over to my Steam Deck and had to switch from mouse and keyboard controls in 60 frames to like 30 frames and controller controls, I was like, I'm feeling a bit elitist here, but man, this really isn't clicking as much. So just a little word of warning on the tech front there. But when it comes to the story of Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon, this is about King Arthur discovering the land of Avalon and leading a conquest to conquer it all. And then a lot of time had basically passed. And in that time, he thinks, he left the land in a brilliant spot. But obviously when you get to Avalon, you find all of this demented stuff going on and wars brewing and druids being killed in mass. Obviously this land has fallen, right? Fall of Avalon. And so you're wondering like what happened here? And King Arthur is in the same spot. So as you progress through the game and you level up, you'll have these conversations at the campfire with King Arthur, and it'll reflect on some of his memories he gathers, but you're also looking for shards of his being, so to say, to piece the bigger parts of the story together. Admittedly, again, part of the reason I don't know too much about the main story is because I keep getting distracted. I'm just like, I want to wander, I want to explore, and the game just lets me do that and gives me really awesome stuff for doing it. So I'm just like all about that. But the story is interesting to open things up, which I thought was just a really good sign. Obviously, it's got a lot more life to it where I got to see where things end up, but I was happy to be like, okay, I'm actually, this isn't like a sidebar that I'm just going to do to get to like the second map. Like I'm actually interested in what's happening here. I also noted, based off my early access experience versus the 1.0 version, there seems to be a light level of choice and consequence. I'll just say that opening up the intro area, there's a character you meet that you can talk to, and depending on what answer you give them, they'll either knock you out or help you out. And in the early access version, I just kind of picked whatever and I got knocked out because because I really wasn't thinking too much about it. Because you know me, I always dip my toe in the pool with early access. But here was one point I was like, okay, like what choice do I want to make? And I ended up going the opposite way of my early access playthrough. And when I went in and I made those choices, King Arthur acknowledged that that was probably the right thing to do. So he was reacting to it a little bit, but also I didn't get knocked out. Still, the quest ended up the same way, where like, again, the end point of it all, which again, I won't spoil for you, was the same, but just the way characters within the story reacted was a little bit different, which I did appreciate. So I'm curious to see how expansive that choice and consequence gets. But overall, you can even skill check in points of conversation. There was a necromancer I met that I was able to like talk him out of necromancy because my character was very magic focused. So I understood like spirituality and principality and all that stuff. So I was able to kind of talk my way through that. It's a percentage chance based skill check. So you just have to have points in that skill. And like there were skill checks I passed that were 25%, but they let me get through. I'm always a little iffy on the dice roll skill checks in dialogue because I like more so that you hit a prerequisite and then it's available to you. I think of it a bit like a trait or a perk in, say, Fallout New Vegas, where it's like, hey, like, you do get to say this. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I know some people just like having the opportunity to do so, but I think it feels better as the player when like your character build is respected and you hit like that certain point and you see that dialogue option is only available to you there. But nonetheless, that's basically the top-down look at Tainted Grail, Fall of Avalon. The combat is really fun in the magic form, at least. Exploration is good. The story is interesting. The music's awesome. The world is engrossing and expansive. And I know, like, after getting, you know, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and Oblivion, and then you get another big fantasy open world game, you're like, man, I don't know, I'm kind of cooked on these things. But this one just offers, again, another flavor. It kind of mixes together the Bethesda jank with the Euro jank into a special, unique blend. But again, it also takes those things I love about Elder Scrolls and evolves them. Because like, I don't think Elder Scrolls does distraction-based exploration really well. You know, it's usually like you go to point A, you go to point B, and you're done. There's sometimes those moments where you'll wander into a crypt and you'll be like, oh, there's someone here, or there's a book here, and a quest opens up. And I love that stuff. But for the most part, this game really does embrace that you're going to this location as a whole for like a main quest or a side quest, but there's quests within those quests that you could find here. And I found that breathed a little bit of life into it, and the combat feeling great as it did, and just being so action oriented was fun while still respecting character building and making my character build feel really unique. So I'm just excited to continue to sink my teeth into this one. It has been an absolute blast. I just want to make sure in that launch window I gave it some coverage, gave it some thoughts, so that those of you who were maybe looking for more of an Elder Scrolls style game in a year where there's been a lot of those types of BGS games, I could get your hands on yet another one, especially because it's getting such a little coverage. So let me know if you're playing Tainted Grail, what you're thinking. If you're planning on picking it up, fire away down below. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will catch you in the next one. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.